about our quiz schedule, because I told you that so I'll be sending you a schedule, and in fact I have prepared one schedule which you can have a look into. Just for your convenience, I'm just trying to share it with you. Just give me a minute. Can you see this? Is the screen visible to you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So there, I have tried to give you two options because you see, if you look at February already it is 17th. We need to have another quiz. What I was planning in the option A, I have given February 19th to be another date for the quiz. Of course, I am planning to have the end semester, which will be around 25% or 30% around April 21, because the last date of submitting the grades will be April 28. So I'll be requiring around 6-7 days time to evaluate your scripts. So that is these are the two options that I'm giving. In case of first option, this is second quiz will be on February 19, third will be on 27, and in March similarly you will be having two quizzes, and in April one quiz and the other test on April 21. That is the proposed date. Of course, I have to check whether these dates are fine or not, because sometimes there might be holidays also. I didn't check for holidays. I have to find it out. The second option is if you find that February 19 means day after tomorrow is very hectic, then the option will be something like this. Then we can have the second quiz on February 24. Then in March, you will be having three quizzes, not two. So March 3, March 17, or March 24. Then in April, you will be having one test, one quiz on April 9 and maybe on April 21. So these two options are available to you. Just to find it out. And I think whatever is feasible, just let me know. But only thing is that, you see, so if I say that you have to vote, then probably, or maybe give your option, then there might be, it will be a little bit chaotic situation. So if you tell me which one will be good for you, accordingly I can proceed. Okay, so you just think about it. Maybe by the end of the class, then you can tell me. So which one will be good, or maybe by the evening, if somebody can take the responsibility on behalf of the class and tell me by the evening what will be your preferred dates or maybe options, then it will be better for me. Okay, is it fine?
So what will be the syllabus for quiz 2?
Yes, sir.
Quiz to syllabus, I'll let you know once the dates are finalized. Basically, it will be for 15 marks only, right? So wherever we left in the first case, maybe public goods to some extent was there, public goods were not there actually. From public goods, it will start. Okay, so it may not cover till today. It might end up maybe before today's class. Is it okay? Just think about and give me your opinion by today, if possible by the end of the class, or if not possible, then by the evening. Somebody has to take the responsibility to find it out which date will be preferred by you, and there should not be multiple responses from the class. There should be one response. Otherwise, it will be difficult for me to find out or finalize the dates, right? Is it fine?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then, yeah, let's come to the class then. We had discussed about economics of exhaustible resources, and the previous class we discussed about economics of renewable resources. Basically, we tried to take the example of uh, fisheries, and we tried to see the biological dimension as well as the kind of human intervention part, and in which case, so what will be the sustainable yield or maybe sustainable use of the resources, and how can we achieve efficiency there. Now, in all these cases, so when you talk about this natural resources, no? So in case of fisheries, for example, in case of fisheries, it might so happen that it's the extraction and kind of maintenance of the resource. So those things vary from the ownership, it's based on the ownership of the resources. In case of private ownership of the resources, things are a little bit different compared to the one where the ownership will be resting on the society at large. Because we try to define resources on the basis of ownership as well. For example, we define private property, where the ownership rights or maybe property rights will be vested on private individuals. Similarly, we can have state property, where the ownership of the resources will be vested on the state. Now, if it is a state property, then use, extraction, and maintenance of the resource will be sole responsibility of the state government or state departments. But there are certain resources for which there are certain issues. We talked about that. For example, the fishery we talked about. No? So in case of fishery, in many cases, you might find that it might be actually used and kind of maintained by the community. Or in many cases, it might so happen that the resource belongs to the entire community, and there will not be any specific rules and regulations, as a result of which the resource becomes kind of open access resource, where there is no restriction at all. Anybody or everybody can make use of the resource. There is no restriction in the use. There is no entry means restriction. There is no exit restriction. So there is no barrier to entry. So that type of a thing is there.
Sir,
But if it is a state property, sorry.
sir, your screen is not visible.
I am not using the screen. I'm just trying to explain. Okay, I'll be using means in fact I'll be sharing some screen definitely, but as of now I'm not sharing anything.
Okay.
What I mean to say is that so there are state properties, there are private properties, and there will be kind of a different kind of property also, which we call as common property rights or common property resources. In case of common property resources, things are a little bit different. The community is involved in the process. The rights are vested in a community. It's a kind of nearby community. For example, we talk about forestry. In case of forestry, the people who are living nearby the forest, so they will be given the responsibility of maintaining the forest resources. And the rights over the resource will mostly be on the community only. So that way, in fact, common property rights regime is defined. And in certain cases, as I gave the example of fishery, maybe in the case of grazing land also, it might happen that the resource is a kind of open access resource. Means anybody or everybody can make use of the resource. If it so happens, no, then what will happen? The people will be more interested in making the best use of the first use of the resource to maximize their own individual benefits. Now, if that happens, the resources might be extinct too soon. So that leads to the problem of the tragedy of commons. And today we'd like to have a look at the issue of the tragedy of commons and so how it can happen, and so how we can explain it with the help of certain model or maybe mathematical tool or something like that. We'll try to have a look at. So I'm just sharing another screen so that you can understand it. Of course, already I have given this to you. If you have not gone through, the write-up will be shared with you, so which will help you in understanding the issues out there. Can you see this one? Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is the PDF file that I shared with you. Basically, it shows what tragedy of commons is all about, and so what kind of things happen in case of tragedy of commons. Now, as we can see, this concept of tragedy of commons was made popular by one gentleman whose name was Gareth Hardin. Gareth Hardin. So he published one article in 1960 explaining the situation of a grazing land, which is not where actually the property rights were not well defined, and it was a kind of open access resource. Open access resource basically means anybody and everybody can make use of the resource. There is no barrier to entry to the resource. And in most of the cases, as we know, the resources are scarce. It's not that resources are plentiful. So there is it's not abundantly available. And many renewable resources are such that the extraction rate of the resource decides whether the resource will remain kind of renewable or it becomes an exhaustible resource. Okay. In the case of grazing land also, similar situation might be there. If it is a kind of private property rights, so then probably nobody else can be allowed to, okay, make use of the resource. But if it is a kind of even if it is a common property rights, then it will so happen. Normally, in case of common property rights, the community will be entrusted with the responsibility of managing the resource, and the community will decide who will use the resource in what quantity. Okay, so the community will be framing the rules and regulations of entitlements of the resource, and also at the same time, the way the resource will be maintained. So that is the case of common property rights regime. Now, in the case of open access resources, as we have pointed out already, so these type of rules and regulations will not be there. So everybody will be making use of the resource. But at the same time, since the resource will be rival in nature, so once individual A makes use of the resource, so the amount available for individual B, C, or D will be less and less. So that is why the tendency here is to make the first use of the resources as much as possible. And everybody will have that tendency, and that tendency will lead to a situation where everybody tries to overuse the resource, and too soon the resource gets exhausted. And that is known as the tragedy of commons or tragedy of common pool resources. Just now, in this case, in this write-up, a situation has been described to explain the situation. And so how tragedy of commons occur. Now, an example of a grazing land has been taken out here. It's a common grazing land where all the villagers can graze their animals, basically cows. Let's assume that they will be having the cows and they graze them in the common grazing land. Now here, it is assumed that in fact a number of cows are grazed on the land. So that is defined as C, assumed to be C. And the cost of purchasing a cow is assumed to be rupees A. Now, if the number of cow is C, then the yield of milk from each of the cow, or maybe kind of a total value of yield of milk from all the cows. So when C cows graze on the land, so can be defined by a term, because it's number of cows will decide how many liters of milk will be available. So that way, FC is the function. FC is the total value of yield of milk when C cows graze on the field. So FC basically it's a this total milk is dependent on the number of cows which are grazing on the grazing land. Now here it is assumed that the marginal product of milk or marginal productivity of milk output, that is positive. That means and every additional cow will add to the total milk production. So that's why it is FDC is considered to be positive. But the rate of growth in the marginal product is considered to be negative. That basically means the rate at which this productivity will grow, marginal productivity will grow. So that will be falling over a period of time. So that's why the second derivative of the FC function is negative. Okay. So we can define total product to be FC. We can define marginal product to be FC. And we can define average product to be FC by C. FC is the total value of milk yield, and C is the number of cows which graze on the grazing land. So FC by C gives us the value of average productivity. Now, when the number of cow is increased, that basically means the value of C increases. So in that case, FC by C is the average value or average milk yield. So since the denominator is increasing, so obviously FC by C will be lower, or in essence, you can say that the FC by C diminishes as the number of cow grazing on the field increases. So in essence, we can say that average milk production will fall. Okay, so when the number of cow grazed on the field is increased. Okay, these curves can be drawn, actually, the total product curve as well as the marginal product curve and average product curve. So those things can be drawn. And if we go by the law of variable proportion, what we find is that in case of total product curve, when we start producing or maybe grazing here, since we are talking about the number of cows determining the total milk output. So it will initially, when more and more number of cows will be brought for grazing in the grazing land, so the total output, milk output, will start increasing. So initially it will grow at a very higher rate, and after a point of time the rate of increase will be falling, but ultimately it will increase. The total output will reach a maximum point, and after that, even if we bring in more cows, the milk productivity will not be increasing, because you see the grazing land will not be sufficiently available, so the cows will not be having enough of food out there, so total product curve might fall. Similarly, the marginal product curve will increase first very quickly, reach its maximum, and then come down. Same is the situation in case of average productivity curve. Same pattern, kind of U-shaped curve. But the fact is that, so out of all these curves, the marginal product curve will reach its peak the first, followed by the average product curve and the total product curve. The point at which total product curve attains its maximum is the point at which the marginal product curve will attain the value of 0. That means marginal product will be 0 at that point. We'll come to that, so we'll try to have a look into that. Now, coming to the property rights issue. So if we assume that the grazing land belongs to a private individual, that the private individual will try to be judicious in making use of the resource or maybe making use of the grazing land. So he will try to maximize his benefit out of grazing the cows on the field. So he will try to define his revenue function or maybe kind of product function and the cost function and try to maximize his profit. So he will try to define his profit function. Profit function is nothing but revenue function or maybe total product function, net of the total cost of product, total cost in this case. So total cost will be in the form of the cost of cows. And if we assume C number of cows, and for each of the cows, the cost is suppose rupees A, then the total cost of having the cows will be AC. And the total milk value that we are talking about is considered to be FC. So FC minus AC will give us the profit function. Now, for an individual owner of the grazing land, so he will try to maximize his profit function, because any rational producer will try to maximize his profit. And that while doing that, we arrive at certain conditions, and these conditions give us the optimal condition of profit maximization. In this case also, we assume the similar situation. So the individual owner will try to maximize his profit function. The profit is suppose S is given as FC minus AC. Now, so for maximization of profit, there are two conditions. As you know, it's a kind of optimization problem, simple optimization problem. So first differentiation of profit function with reference to the number of cows. So that should be equivalent to 0. And second derivative of the profit function with reference to the number of cows, that should be negative. Now here, if we assume that the first derivative of the profit function is equivalent to 0, that means ds dc is equivalent to 0, then we find a situation where f dash c is just equivalent to a. Okay, f dash c is the marginal function of the total product curve, or in essence you can say is the marginal product, and this marginal product is equated with a. A is nothing but, what is a here? A is the price of the cow. So what we find here is that the marginal product is equivalent to the price. Okay, price is in essence you can say input cost. So that is the optimizing condition for any producer. Okay, the marginal product value should be just equivalent to the marginal cost, or in essence the input cost. So here, this A is considered to be constant. So that way, in fact, every additional cow brought or bought will be having a cost of A. So in essence, we can consider this to be marginal cost as well as the price. Okay, so here in terms of diagram, we can see that. So this is the one. On the left hand side, this is F dash C. F dash C is nothing but kind of marginal product function. So this marginal product function, actually it reaches a maximum. So actually it should start from something like this. It will increase, then it will reach maximum, then it will start falling. Okay. And this A is considered to be fixed. So price is not increasing. Price is considered to be fixed. So this is a kind of straight line horizontal curve. Okay, parallel to the x-axis. In the x-axis, we are considering the number of cows. C is the number of cow. And on the y-axis, we try to plot the product, means values actually, product values, product function as well as the cost function. We try to portray out here. So that's why we'll be getting the marginal product function as well as the average product function here. So when f dash c is equal to A, so this is the point, and this point actually from here, if we drop a line, it actually intersects the x-axis at point C cap, and this C cap will tell us what will be the optimal number of cows that should graze on the field. Okay, so in case of private grazing land, so the number of cows that will be allowed to graze on the field is C cap, right? Could you get the point? So this is with reference to the optimal condition for grazing in the field. But if we relax this condition, if we come to a kind of common ownership of the grazing land, things become a little bit different. Okay. Now let's assume that the field is held in common and no villager can be prevented from grazing cows on the grazing land. That is obvious. We do not believe in barrier to entry or barrier to exit. In that case, everybody can have the access to the grazing land. So now, given any C is the number of cows, the value of the yield of milk per cow is given by the average productivity. And that average productivity is FC divided by C. Now, each villager who wants to bring additional cows for grazing on the field, he or she will try to compare his return with the price of cows A. So average return on an average, he will try to find it out. That is given by FC by C, and the price is equivalent to A. Yes, he will try to compare these two values. And basically, he'll look into a kind of situation where these two values might be equal. But if whether he will decide to bring in an extra cow to the field or not, that depends on the condition, whether this value, because if it's an additional cow means already C cows are there. So if you have one additional cow, that means C plus 1 cows might be there. So in that case, what will be the value of the average productivity? So he'll try to calculate that one, FC plus 1 by C plus 1. And he will try to compare that value with the price of the cow. Additional cow will be having a cost of A, for example, which is considered to be the price out here. So he will try to compare the value of FC plus 1 divided by C plus 1 with the price of cow, which is given as A. And whenever he finds that the value, this average value of after grazing an additional cow is greater than the cost or maybe price of purchasing the cow, so then he will bring in the additional cow and graze it in the grazing land. Okay, so long as he finds that FC plus 1 divided by C plus 1 is greater than A, so he will continue bringing in additional cows for grazing on the grazing land. So cows will be added to the stock grazing on the field till a point where FC star divided by C star is just equivalent to A. If it is less than the value of A, obviously they will not be interested in bringing in additional cows. So this is the point, F C star by C star, where C star is the optimal number of cows which can be grazed on the field when there is common ownership of the grazing land. So then F sister by sister is equal to A will decide how many cows will be brought in for grazing on the plot of land. And this condition that FC by C or F sister by sister is equivalent to A can be interpreted as the free entry zero profit condition. So which also means that this can be rearranged that as F sister minus A sister, which is equivalent to 0. Okay, so F sister is basically kind of total product, value of the total product, minus A sister is nothing but the total cost. So if you, okay, so subtract this, the net value is equivalent to 0. So that is why it is considered to be zero profit condition. But of course, normally when we say zero profit condition, we are talking about having the normal profit, not having, so we do not talk about a kind of abnormal profit out here. So there will be some kind of profit for the entrepreneurship activities of the entrepreneur or owner of the cows. So that is obviously there. So if we find that, if we try to plot this now on the same curve or same diagram, then we find a situation like this, where we have now the average product curve, which is given as FC by C. And we try to find out equality between this curve and kind of A. A is basically the price of the cow. If we arrive at that condition, so corresponding to that value, we find the number of cows to be C star. And C, since this average product curve attains the maximum value much later than the marginal product curve, so that sister value will be higher than the C cap value. That means compared to the situation where private property rights are available of the grazing land, so in the case of common property rights, of course, although we are saying common property rights here, it's a little bit different from common property rights. Rather, you can say open access resource here when there is no barrier to entry, free entry, open access resource. In that case, the number of cows which will be brought in to graze in the grazing land will be much, much higher compared to what it should be under the private ownership of the grazing land. So obviously, this is not the optimal from the point of view of societal overall welfare. So that is the problem. This will create the problem as so more number of cows will try to exhaust the grazing land too soon. So that will lead to kind of exhaustion of the grazing land. So this same thing can be mathematically shown out here. Diagrammatically, it is shown that C star is greater than C cap. Now mathematically also it can be shown. So it has been written here. We assume that the additional cows, or in a sense we can say that differentiation of FC by C, basically average product curve. Actually, when we bring in one extra cow over there, so the total product, average product value, so it means in fact the change in the average product value will be lesser and lesser. Normally that is the case. If we have more C, then FC by C is smaller. So the same thing when we bring in one extra cow, additional addition made to the average product value, that will be smaller and smaller. So that is given by differentiation of FC by C, which refers to C as the negative one. So if you actually find it out, this value, you will find that F dash C minus FC by C, whole thing divided by C, that will be less than 0. And this will actually ultimately show that F dash C value is less than FC by C. So that means, so since F dash C is less than FC by C, corresponding to F dash C, the number of cows that will be grazing is C cap, and corresponding to kind of FC by C, so we find the number of cows grazing to be C star. So you can find it out. C star will be greater than C cap. So there will be too many cows grazing on the field. Okay, so ultimately, since grazing land or maybe grass on the grazing land will be rival in consumption, too many cows on the same plot of field or maybe same plot of land, so that will result in exhaustion of the resource too quickly. So it has been mentioned here that whenever more cows are added to the number already grazing, so this will have a negative externality effect on milk production, because grass available will be lesser and lesser. In that case, milk production will be adversely affected, where we consider milk production to be directly dependent on the number of cows. So that is why what we find is that when the land is owned in common, villagers will not take this negative externality into account, and as a result, too many cows will be allowed to graze on the common land. So that will result in exhaustion of the resource, or maybe kind of degradation of the resource too soon. So that is nothing but the tragedy of commons. So this can be, of course, discussed with the help of game theoretic approach. We'll try to go for that as well. Okay. This is what actually I shared with you. Probably you have gone through it. So let me show you how game theoretic approach can be used to discuss this issue again. This is a diagrammatic representation. You can always have a kind of mathematical representation also. So for this, we have taken a very simple example. Many of you might be knowing about the concept of prisoner's dilemma. So basically, the prisoner's dilemma concept can be made use of to discuss or maybe analyze the situation of tragedy of commons. Okay. Now here, what we are doing in case of prisoner's dilemma, basically the prisoners have a dilemma to take a decision. They are given certain options. Okay, so these options, when they evaluate the options, they find certain solution or options to be the best from their point of view. But actually, so that cannot be the best solution for them. So there are other better solutions which they cannot consider because of certain issues or certain problems. Because of that, okay, in prisoner's dilemma, a suboptimal decision is taken by the prisoners in the absence of cooperation amongst themselves. The similar situation might happen in case of tragedy of commons. So that is why first we are trying to explain what the prisoner's dilemma is all about, and then we try to extend this to explain the concept of tragedy of commons. And you can go through the example given out here. For example, there are two prisoners, or in a sense you can say persons. Names are given a very domestic name, or in a sense a very localized name. So Horen and Bittu. Actually, so this is what we have already sent to you at the very beginning. So if you go through that, you will find this same example. Actually, the same thing is there. You can go through that. So there are two persons, Horen and Bittu. So they have been arrested on the charges of theft. The thing is that, so there are certain charges, but the charges are not yet proved, and both of them are kept in separate cells. They cannot communicate in between themselves. Okay, so there is no communication possible between them. So they have been given a few options. The options are like this. If one confesses the crime, but the other doesn't, the one who confesses will be set free, while the latter will receive punishment of 5 years in jail. Okay. Okay, so whoever confesses will be set free, but the other has to, means other will not be confessing in that situation, right? Okay, if both confess, then they will get a modest punishment. Suppose 2 years, it's 2 years of imprisonment each. And if neither of them confesses, they will be freed after 3 months due to lack of evidence. So these are the three options actually. So which are given, which are kept in front of them. So the options can be seen here. Okay, so Bittu, if he confesses and Horen also confesses, then both of them will be having a moderate punishment of 2 years each. If suppose Bittu confesses but Horen doesn't confess, in that case Bittu will be set free, but Horen will be severely penalized. The punishment is 5 years. Suppose Bittu doesn't confess, Horen confesses, same thing. Bittu will be imprisoned for 5 years, Horen will be set free. So if none of them confesses, they will be actually they will be set free after 3 months because of lack of evidence. So this is the situation for them. Now what will happen? Actually, Bittu and Horen, so they will not have any communication in between themselves. Bittu will believe that if Horen confesses, then the best strategy for him will be to confess. Because if Horen confesses, he will be set free. And if Horen confesses and Bittu doesn't confess, then Horen will be set free, whereas Bittu will be imprisoned for 5 years. Similarly, Horen also think like that. Okay, Horen will feel that if Bittu confesses and he doesn't confess, then so he will be imprisoned for 5 years, whereas Bittu will be set free. And similarly, if Horen confesses, the best means in fact, if Bittu confesses, the best strategy for Horen will be to confess. So as a result of that, both of them will end up confessing. Although going by this table, actually payoff matrix table, what we find is that the best strategy for them should have been this not confessing the crime by any of them. So in that case, they would have got much better result, 3 months each imprisonment. But that doesn't happen because of the fact that there is no communication possible in between these two prisoners. So the likely outcome is that both will confess and get a punishment of 2 years each. However, it is interesting to note that if both could have established some contact and cooperated, then they could have got only 3 months punishment simply by denying the charge against them. But since they have been kept separate, cooperation is not possible. And as a result of that, they will be getting a suboptimal solution of this. So that is the essence of prisoner's dilemma. The lack of cooperation among the parties deprives them of the best of all the outcomes. So these outcomes that they have got are not the best outcomes, but they have to be content with that because of the situation in which they do not have any ways of coordinating themselves, so they cannot contact each other. So there will be suboptimal outcome of the strategies out there. Okay, that is kind of prisoner's dilemma thing. So prisoner's dilemma refers to a situation where each participant receives a comparatively lower return as a result of non-cooperation than what they would have received if there were cooperation between them. Okay, so this is the thing. So that condition has actually resulted in some kind of less than optimal kind of result, or in a sense, you can outcome for both of them. Just a minute. Can you see the file?
Yes, sir.
Screen is visible, yes. Now the same sort of prisoner's dilemma can be observed in case of the commons. So here, actually the same example can be extended to discuss the problem of tragedy of commons. Now what is done here is that in the case of tragedy of commons, basically desperate use by all the herdsmen lead to degradation of the grazing land. For the sake of convenience, what we assume is that there are only two herdsmen. For example, these same two people actually, Bittu and Horen. The different options given open to each of them are shown in table 2. Because something like this, they can either cooperate with each other or they may not cooperate. If they cooperate, then the returns will be relatively higher. For example, if Bittu cooperates and Horen also cooperates, then the outcomes will be 50-50. That is the payoff for each of them. Both of them will be receiving a relatively higher payoff. Suppose Bittu cooperates, so that means he doesn't graze many cows on the grazing land, whereas Horen doesn't cooperate. Okay, so assuming that Bittu will be getting around 10, the payoff is lesser, Horen's payoff is higher. The same thing when the other way around it happens. Horen cooperates, but Bittu doesn't cooperate. But if none of them cooperates, the payoffs will be much lesser. It will be around 20-20. Of course, actually, there is a technical issue out there. I believe this value should be a little bit smaller than 40. This is arbitrarily put, so that's why this problem might have cropped up actually. So that should be smaller actually. So ultimately, much smaller amount of outcome or much smaller payoff will be available to both of them. Of course, you see, so here the best action could have been the cooperation between the parties out here, but since they will be ending up not cooperating, because the idea here is to go for making the first use of the resource. So as many cows as you can, actually, you try to graze on the grazing land. So as a result of that, what will happen? So you'll be getting much lesser payoff out of that, as because so the land maybe grasses will be grazing land will be exhausted too soon, and result, ultimate outcome for the herdsmen will be lesser and lesser. So again, suboptimal payoff or suboptimal outcome will be the result as a result of this situation. Now, so how to resolve this issue? Problem is there is no cooperation, so there is suboptimal result. Obviously, if it so happens that these two herdsmen over a period of time feels or maybe face the same problem over a period of time every year, if they go through this situation, so then probably they can think about solving this problem and they can come forward and discuss between each other, and so try to find out a solution by way of cooperating. If they do that, probably, so then they will realize that there are better payoffs when they cooperate than when they do not cooperate. So in that case, a kind of repeated game approach, or in a sense, you can say, so where cooperation is possible, so that approach might give a relatively better outcome for each of them participating in the game. Okay, so so if they go through the dilemma repeatedly, so the players are likely to realize the mutual gain from cooperation, and their choice of action may be different from what they will be in a one-off game. So there are a lot of examples actually in which members of a community get together to form rules to self-regulate the use of their commons and thereby manage to avoid the tragedy of commons. That is what is suggested as a likely solution for this type of tragedy of common problems. But of course, for that, cooperation is important. Many a time we see that this cooperation is not properly there amongst the members of the society, as a result of which actually this tragedy of commons happen. But theoretically, it is possible to overcome this problem if there is a kind of repeated game framework, in which case the cooperation between the members is possible. And if it is possible, then things will be a little bit better for them. So, in fact, there are many examples, not only in case of grazing land, in case of flood-prone areas also, similar situations are there, where actually people can come together and they can have common approach towards certain problems. For example, flood is there. In that case, many a time the kharif crops might not be possible because flood might create havoc. So they might have a rule of going for kind of rabi crop cultivation. In the case of rabi crop cultivation, again, some cooperation might be required amongst the farmers, and they can frame certain rules regarding kind of cows being allowed to graze in the field and other things. So if they frame the rules and they can come forward, come together, then probably they will be better off compared to the situation where so without cooperation, means in fact the outcome will be a little bit different. So that way, in fact, there are examples in which repeated game framework with cooperation help people to overcome the problems of tragedy of commons. Okay, so I'd like to stop here today. If you have any question, I can take up. And if you have decided on the schedule of the quiz and test, you can tell me. Okay, if you have any question.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, will the quizzes be like a best of 7 or something, or all the quizzes are getting counted? Hello.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Have you gone through the schedule?
Yes, sir. In both the schedules, I have conflicting dates and both are important commitments. So I'll have to miss the quiz on one of the days. So I was asking if it is best of those, then I think I can miss one quiz.
No, no, what I mean to say is that you see here, there are 6 quizzes, right?
Okay,
1 to
yes,
6
sir.
are the quiz dates.
Okay,
And
yeah,
7th
best
is the
of.
end semester. That basically means that there will be 6 quizzes. I'll be picking up the 5 best quizzes out of these 6, right?
Okay, thank you, sir.
There is at least one more option for you.
Okay.
That is included here. Yeah. Any other clarification needed for anybody else?
So, I have a doubt regarding the quiz one marking scheme.
Okay. Okay. Please tell
Actually,
me.
for most of the questions, there were 2 or 3 correct options, right?
Yes.
If we are marking 2 out of those 3 which are right,
Mm.
so will we get the
Mm.
partial marking or not for those?
Actually, in this quiz, actually, I have given the instruction there. You may not have gone through the instructions out there. So what I was saying is that I'll not be giving you any negative marks, but I'll not also be giving you any partial marks. So for getting the marks, you have to correct all the options correctly. Means all the options should be correctly mentioned. Only then you will be getting the full marks. But there will
Okay.
not be any partial marks. There will not be any negative marks also. You'll be given 0 marks, not negative, right? That is the thing.
Okay. So regarding this quiz schedule, we have created a poll until now. We are getting more polls for the option B. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. You please do one thing by this evening. So may I know who I'm speaking to?
Ibrar Ali.
Ibrar. Ibrar, please do one thing. By this evening, you just get the kind of options expressed by the students, your colleagues, or maybe your friends. And then let me know by this evening. If more people have given option for option B, then we'll go for that. No problem. I don't have issues. I am just giving you these 2 options because you see, I was also engaged with some other work. I could not prepare the schedule that time. So that was the reason. Because we have to finish this also, no? So there should be some sufficient gap. That was another issue. So if
Okay.
you
So
opt
I
for B, no problem. If you opt for A, there is no problem. Only thing is that please let me know by tonight.
okay, good sir. We'll let
Ah,
you.
okay, okay. Anything else from anybody else? Any other confusion?
Yes, sir. Actually, the in quiz one, there was a question where you asked the name of the book, and the marks are not yet updated because some of the students have written the year and the author also.
No, that will be taken care of in the final marks score sheet, no? So that will obviously be reflected.
Yeah.
Of course, apart from that, that is a minor issue that you should not worry much about. But apart from that, there is another actually question where probably multiple answers should have been correct, but somehow in the quiz paper, so it considers only one single correct answer. So that is also to be reviewed, and probably all of you will be getting the marks for that. So that is a bigger issue actually compared to this issue. And let me tell you one thing. So if you are asked about the title of a book, why should you write about the author of the book or maybe the year of publication? Why is it required? It's a general question, you see. So if you are asked about the book's title, then you should write the title of the book. Yes, 1912, I mentioned in the slide. That's a different issue, right? Be careful. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Mhm.
No problem.
Yeah, yeah. It's okay then. If you don't have any other question, probably I can stop here for today. So we'll meet tomorrow. And if you get the responses from your fellow student members, then let me know by tonight about the preferred schedule of the quizzes and the test. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So, okay, then thank you very much. See you tomorrow.